Hi, this is going to be my fifth Build lecture. It's going to be on chapter 15, and it's going to cover the host defenses 1. The first line of defense for the human body is going to be, this is just a bunch of the first line of defenses for the physical and anatomical defenses of the human body. So the physical defenses and anatomical defenses are going to be categorized as your skin. The furthest layer of the skin, which is called the stratum corneum, is comprised of epithelial cells that have merged together, kind of like they've been glued together, and they've been impregnated with keratin, which is basically impenetrable. Most microbes and pathogens cannot get through keratin. Keratin is also going to be what hair follicles are comprised of, so that's going to protect your scalp. Sweat glands also help by flushing out microbes and pathogens when you sweat. Mucous membranes are going to be next. Those are located in the different tracts of the body, so like your respiratory tract, digestive tract, the urinary tract, and the eyes. In the respiratory tract, let's say you breathe in things, so you've got hair and stuff in your nose is going to catch a lot of the microbes and pathogens that come in your nose that can cause illness. The ones that they don't catch are going to be caught by like the brachial tree area here with your like bronchioles and all that. So they've got like cilia and stuff on them that'll catch those pathogens and kind of keep them from going down in there and getting into your systems. Urinary tract, of course, that's going to flush out pathogens when you urinate in the bathroom, stuff like that. The eyes, the lacrimal area creates tears. When you cry, microbes and pathogens will come out through your tears as well. Another way that pathogens and microbes can leave the body is through emesis, which is just basically throwing up or vomiting it's just a fancy word for that, or passing stool. For the innate chemical defenses, that's going to include what goes on in the inner workings of the body. That's going to be stuff like sebum, which is created by the sebaceous glands, and they have antimicrobial properties that they release. Again, as I said before, tears, and also in your saliva, they contain the lysozymes, and those are going to provide antibacterial things in those defense lines. The stomach is going to produce hydrochloric acid that'll disintegrate basically most pathogens because a lot of them are heat resistant. They don't like a lot of high heat. They prefer a more cool area in order to grow. The intestines produce bile and digestive juices. It's basically like battery acid. So a lot of microbes and pathogens cannot survive that environment either. It can also, they've also found that semen actually contains a lot of antimicrobial substances. It's referred to as seminal plasmin. It'll attack pathogens. The vaginal area, also the pH of the vagina is kept in such a way that it's acidic, so it's not very friendly to microbes growing there. Basically, the whole point of the first line of defense of the body is to keep out anything that would cause an illness or injury to the human body. Let's go to the next slide here. And so now we're going to talk about the second line of defense. That's going to be, I broke these up into two different pages. So there's two of the four second line of defenses on this page, and then the other two will be on a second page, which will be after this one. So the second line of defense, the first one I'm going to talk about is fever. Fever is what keeps pathogens from multiplying that are sensitive to high heat temperatures. The examples of things that would, be exempt from this would be like polio, the common cold virus, HPV, mycobacterium species. All those, they don't like a high heat environment. So it would be those for examples. Fever is when the body temperature is above normal. They used to consider the normal body temperature to be around 98.6. But they've recently found in studies that that doesn't seem to be the case for most people. Most people actually tend to run a little bit lower these days. And I found that that's kind of what, I've noticed about myself since I was a kid. My normal body temperature range is 96.8. So really, when I'm running a fever around 99, that's considered more of a high-grade fever for me than like 100 would be for most standard people who run a temperature of 98.6. Anyways, the benefits of fever are going to help the body maintain homeostasis, kind of like that leveling bar thing that we learned about in anatomy. It's, a series of things the body does to get back to a standard level to keep the body systems going optimally. It's going to keep temperature-sensitive microbes from multiplying, as I've said. It's also going to cause iron reduction, and in doing so, this is beneficial because a lot of bacteria and microbes and stuff, they depend on a nutrient-rich environment for their nutritional needs. So macrophages will actually stop or slow down the iron production, which will reduce the reactions required to have bacteria grow. It's also, fever will also stimulate the immune defense. So fever will speed up phagocytosis happening. It's going to aid lymphocytes also in finding these pathogens and stuff so that the phagocytes can actually go and destroy them. The next one's going to be antimicrobial products. This is going to be produced by the host to fight microbial infections. There's four main categories of antimicrobial products, and these are referred to as interferon. This is basically just cytokines that initiate or lead the development of the body's white blood cells. There's three major types of interferons, or IFNs, and they're called either alpha, beta, or interferon gamma. The next category is going to be the complement, then the antimicrobial peptides, and then restriction factors. I'm going to talk about each of those individually in the next coming slides. This next little thing here is just telling you what, kind of going more in depth on what interferons are. I don't know if you can see that down there. It's been a little bit convoluted by the camera screen here, but it basically just explains how those work. On the next one, we're going to continue discussing the second line of defenses. The next two, which are the last two of the four, are going to be phagocytosis and inflammation. Phagocytosis is one of the most important parts of this chapter, I feel like, so I really like to touch on that one. Here in my background over here, you can kind of see what a phagocyte would look like, and it's actually engulfing these bacteriums in it. And then my background on this side is just kind of showing you what inflammation feels like on the human body. Where the spots are red and orange, stuff like that, that's showing where the pain, inflammation, redness, swelling, and all that would be. But to begin, we're going to start with phagocytosis. So phagocytosis is performed by phagocytes. And they do this by ingesting foreign cells, such as antigens. And it's one way that the human immune system protects itself from infection. It's going to take place in 6 different steps. The first one is going to be chemotaxis. The second one is going to be ingestion, then phagolysosome, then destruction, and then excretion. During phagocytosis, once it actually engulfs the cell, or eats the cell as it's known as called, it's going to release a bunch of different antimicrobial substances to further destroy that. Now, there are some antigens that can survive that and live inside the cell continually even after that, such as TB antigens. They can survive that, no problem. What happens during phagocytosis is phagocytes are going to travel through the tissues once they're alerted, or even before that. They just go around the body searching out like the bad guys, the antigens in the body's tissues, and if they find them, they're going to capture them by engulfing them, and they're going to destroy them. There's three main types of phagocytes. That's going to be your neutrophils, eosinophils, and monocytes. Neutrophils are like the innate first defense thing in the lineup of those. The common symptom of bacterial infection is neutrophilia. And when that happens, neutrophils are going to be called to battle first. The primary ingredient of pus is neutrophils. So whenever you have pus in something, that means that neutrophils are there. The eosinophils are drawn in by parasitic infections and antigens. It's an antibody reaction. They play a much smaller role than the neutrophils, but they're still important. Next, we have the monocytes. They're going to be called in from the bloodstream to the body's tissues via chemical stimulus. So once that chemical stimulus is sent, then those will be sent out. Then once they're sent in, they actually morph into something called a macrophage. Okay, now the next one we're going to talk about is inflammation. Inflammation is a natural innate reaction to any sort of trauma to the tissues of the body caused by an injury. It could be something like a bee sting or broken bone, anything like that. It's basically the body's warning system, like, hey, you need to stop, slow down, and assess what's going on here. There's 4 main signs of inflammation. That's going to be redness, swelling of the location. It's going to feel warm or really kind of hot to the touch, and you're going to feel pain. There's different factors as causation, and it can affect many different body systems, and we're going to discuss and go over what the purpose of it is. First, we're going to talk about the different symptoms. So redness is going to be caused by an increase in circulation and widening of the blood vessels in the injured tissues. Warmth is going to be caused by the heat that's emitted from the increased blood flow to the injured area. Swelling is going to be caused by the heightened fluid amounts, which is just plasma, being slipped away into the tissues. And then pain is, of course, going to be caused by the nerve endings being stimulated. Nothing quite hurts like nerve pain. Loss of function is also another symptom. It's not really widely talked about, but it's been added to our textbook. As I said, it can affect any part of the system, so it can affect anything, including your vessels, blood vessels, lungs, bones, joints, basically anything like that. Autoimmune diseases are really classified as having a lot of inflammation, stuff like, fibromyalgia and stuff like that. It's chronic inflammation take effect with those. The purpose of it is to attract and assemble immune elements to the site of injury, and it's going to activate procedures to repair the damaged tissues and clear away any harmful substances. So it does have a purpose for the inflammation. It's going to demolish microbes and keep them from interfering with the body any further. And it can last, as I said, from anywhere from a few minutes to a few hours to being chronic and lasting for years or just a lifetime. Then we're going to go to the next slide. Here, this is just a little quick slide I had made up that's going to show you kind of what phagocytosis looks like. So this first step here is, they're calling it entrapment. This is basically chemotaxis right here. So this little yellow bacterium here is being swallowed up or engulfed by the phagocyte, and then it's forming a phagosome inside of that, and then it's going to start to break down or degrade that bacterium with the antimicrobial fluid that it has inside of it. And then it's going to perform exocytosis and emit whatever little particles are left over after it breaks that bacterium down. Next, we're going to talk about complement. The complement system is called this because it helps or complements the immune system. It's comprised of 50 blood proteins that destroy bacteria and certain viruses. There's 3 different ways it can be activated, and that's through the classical system, the lectin system, or the alternative system. Right here in the middle, I have a picture showing you the classical pathway of the complement system with the C1 complex and all that. Next, we're going to talk about the complement cascade. This is going to happen in 4 stages, which is initiation, amplification and cascade, polymerization, and membrane attack. It's going to basically, go in a circle continually forever and ever, just showing, like this thing in the middle showing you how the pathways work. So it's basically just going to go in a unit forever and ever and ever. It's never going to change. Next, we're going to go over the antimicrobial peptides, which are also called AMPs. What they are short proteins comprised of 12 to 50 amino acids, and they're part of the natural innate immune system. What they do is they can install themselves inside of microbe membranes and destroy them. And the reason why they're important is because they can influence the immune system responses. It's also a possible game changer in the war against antimicrobial drug resistance. If they can find a way to harness this, we might be able to end microbial drug resistance, which is going to be a big thing. It's going to keep a great number of us alive in the coming years in case, it gets so bad with the resistance that we can no longer find antibiotics to work for us. We're going to go to the next slide over here. This is going to be talking about host restriction factors. So what is it? Host cells and immune systems create molecules that can reduce the capability of viruses to duplicate once they infiltrate a cell. These are made up of proteins and nucleic acids. How do they reproduce? Basically, proteins and nucleic acids can attach to certain parts of a virus, and then they do the following. They prevent the union of a new virus parts, which is referred to as viral synthesis. They prevent the manufacturing of a new virus, and they keep it from forming. And then they can avert, virus parts from going from the host cell. Is basically what it comes down to. Here in the middle, I just have a restriction factor thing showing you kind of how that works. This is going to be a really big deal when it comes to stuff like viruses, things that cause HIV. All right, thank you for coming.